Welcome to Making Money with Laura Sanders, a name you can trust. With over 20 years of real estate experience and selling over 150 homes a year, Laura Sanders is the #1 RE/MAX agent in the state of Florida for 2021. Join us each week as we discuss how to make money through buying and flipping homes to renting versus selling and everything in between. To join the conversation, call in live. 888-994-4995, Studio A.
Hi everyone, and welcome to Making Money with Laura Sanders, and I am your host, Laura Sanders. Every week we talk about something that helps you make some money, save some money, or just navigate this crazy world that we're in right now. Every week we talk about something that I think is pertinent to all of our lives, and this week we're going to talk about insurance, and not like we haven't talked about it before, but it's a continuous conversation that I think a lot of us need to really look and deep dive into. So today we have Brandon here with us, and he's from Goosehead, so welcome.
Thank you so much for having me, I appreciate it.
Yes, and so you're an insurance agent.
Correct, a broker.
Okay, so first explain to us what that means by being a broker.
Yeah, so you have two different types of insurance agents. You have what's called captive agents and brokers. And captive agents, they typically work for a larger company that want them to sell that one product.
Okay,
so
we won't say who those are.
Yeah, so they just want them to be typically selling that one product. In Florida, there's a little bit of a range there. But a broker like myself, I go out and I shop with a bunch of different companies. And so I look for the best rate. I look out for the client and not the carrier.
Okay. So lately, I personally own some property, and lately I've been getting a lot of notices from Citizens. So Citizens is our coverage for the state, right? Mm-hmm. That's like the state provided insurance. And lately I've been getting a lot of notices from them saying that they're going to drop me, mm-hmm. or they're going to put me with another carrier if they can find it within 20%. Mm-hmm. They're also asking for my leases. They're wanting to know if I live in the property. They're asking me all kinds of crazy questions, which I think could be very confusing for the layperson that doesn't do real estate. Because even sometimes I'm like, what is going on here? And I think I'm pretty smart when it comes to real estate. No, not to break my arm, but so I try to be a little funny. I find myself funny anyway. So what I'm getting at is I think that like our listeners really need to know like what's going on with this whole depopulation of Citizens, and what does that mean for the consumer?
Yeah, so depopulation, first of all, is a terrible term. I don't know why they call it that. But what it is Citizens has the largest amount of insurance policies of any insurance company for homeowners in Florida. And so they have too much of a load, and they have to offload it somehow. Citizens is what we call the insurer of last resort, which gives a good idea if they're overloaded, that they've got too much going on and the market as a whole doesn't look great because everybody's going to the last resort.
Is that a bad thing?
Well, it just tells us of the state of the private market. Right. And the public market is only Citizens. But with that said, Citizens plays by a different set of rules. What they do is tied in with our Florida state laws because they're a state-backed insurance company. And so that allows them to do things like assess a policy during the middle of the term if there's a major catastrophe, or offload you to another company.
In the middle of the term?
Yeah. So on every quote that I send for Citizens, it says at the bottom, warning, you may be assessed following a major catastrophe.
Okay.
And the reason they do that is because if there's a major hurricane that hits, well, they have to make sure that they are paying out because they're the state. They're not a company, they're not for profit. And the way that they do that, if they needed to get more funds, they can assess policyholders.
So I hear what you're saying, that obviously they have a lot of people they're covering. So what happens if, and I know you don't know all the answers, right? But what happens if like tomorrow, Hurricane Laura comes through, right? She rips apart all of Broward County, and do they run out of money? Like, how does that work?
Yeah,
Can that happen?
There's a couple answers here. So can that happen? Of course, I don't know. But you've got the assessment option that Citizens can do, and so they can assess policyholders, and that's going to increase their bank account so they can pay out claims. The second thing to that, and a lot of people don't know about this, but there's a surcharge on all policies called FIGA, which is Florida Insurance Guarantee Act, if I remember correctly.
Okay.
And it's very, very similar to being with an FDIC insured bank.
Up to a certain amount?
Well, with FDIC, it's up to $250, I
Right.
believe. But it helps pay out claims in the event of a major storm if an insurance company were to go insolvent, meaning go under.
But they have to notify you when they're going insolvent, correct?
Yeah, they should.
Right. I mean, and you usually can still try to get something out of them while they're in that process.
Which is where FIGO would come in.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's go back. A lot of people are aware last year we had a tremendous amount of flooding going on in the city of Fort Lauderdale. And, you know, again, I feel like I know a lot of things, but like I never really paid attention to the flood policy, right? I always thought, okay, we have a natural disaster, we have a flood, and you're going to be covered. But yet, it's only going to cover $250,000, right?
No, actually, so there's a few things with flood.
Okay.
First, it's really important to notice that on a regular homeowner's policy, flood is typically not covered. You have to add what's called an endorsement or like an add-on. So you
Well, isn't
pay,
that the flood policy that we buy separately, I'm saying?
well, some insurance companies you can get an endorsement for flood.
And how much typically would that cost, and what would that usually be as coverage-wise?
You can change the coverages, which that's something I do with my clients. I don't just send a quote. I like to go over the coverages and the line items so they know what they're paying for.
Okay.
But that varies based on the policy, where the home is, what flood zone it's in. Now, as far as only getting $250,000 in coverage, that's if you're with the National Flood Insurance Program. They max out at $250,000.
Okay.
Now, there's other private flood insurance companies that you can go with that
In
don't max
addition,
out.
right? Oh, so
Oh,
there's,
you can just go straight to one of those companies.
so what does that look like?
It depends on the flood zone, the area, you know, of course, there's a lot of variables there. But sometimes those private flood insurance companies beat the National Flood Insurance Program.
And what are some of those names of those companies?
The one that I go to mostly is called Neptune Flood.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've actually never heard of it. And,
Yeah.
you know, it's funny because I had a client buying $2.4 million house and he wanted flood insurance. And yet people are like, oh, yeah, we can write another policy onto the flood policy with, you know, was it right National Flood? Yeah.
Yeah.
And he wanted it to cover, you know, above and beyond, just like, for instance, which we were talking about earlier, you and I, about Citizens only covers up to 700,000 in certain cities, right? Because that changes,
in the state.
Isn't it like certain for like Broward and Palm Beach or a little? I think
So
one's like 900, isn't it?
They have a max coverage A of 700,000.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's coverage A. So when someone's purchasing a property, they might pay 1.1, but they're paying for the building and the land.
Right.
But the land
and the land's
might have
not going to blow away.
Yeah,
But it could
nothing's
flood
gonna-
away. I mean,
it could flood away. Probably not. So you don't insure the land. You only
Right.
insure the structure itself.
but a lot of times, like the land, like in $2.4 million, like we're only, if it was worth 400, 500, 600,000, we're still talking about 1.8 of a buyer being concerned
Correct.
of how to cover and how to protect. So let's go to commercial break. When we come back, let's talk about like what can we do, what added things that we can do to protect our home, and anything else that you think is important for our listeners. So stay tuned. We're going to go to commercial and see our sponsors, and we'll be right back.
At JK Closing Attorneys, we do all of the same things that a title company does, but with the benefits of being a law office. We can help with residential real estate, short sales, commercial real estate, refinances, 1031 exchanges, and FIRPTA withholding.
Contact JK Closing Attorneys today at 954-332-3111. Again, that is 954-332-3111.
Whether you're buying, selling, refinancing, or building your dream home, you have a lot riding on your loan specialist. Max Fish, a top 1% mortgage loan officer in the nation, will give you a same-day qualifying quote. Max Fish is committed to providing his customers with mortgage services that exceed their expectations. Ensuring that you make the right choice for you and your family is his ultimate goal. Contact Max Fish today at 954-729-6933 or max.fisch@nwmcorp.net.
You have been watching Making Money with Laura. For more information, contact Laura Sanders at 954-650-0827 or visit her website at laurasell.com. And now back to the show.
Hi everyone, and welcome back to Making Money with Laura Sanders, and I am your host, Laura Sanders. We're talking about insurance. Insurance has been something that's been a big topic lately. But before we get back to the insurance, always want to remind you that I am your realtor and I'm here to help you sell your home. If you're thinking about selling your home or buying a home and you want to make sure you're represented correctly, you definitely want to give me a call. My name's Laura Sanders. I'm with RE/MAX Direct. I've been doing this for over 23 years. My number's 954-650-0827. It does pay to hire someone that has experience. So let's get back to the insurance, because this is something every day that I feel like I'm jumping through hoops. I'm trying to sit there. Last night I was on a listing appointment, right? And they're like, our insurance is $9,000 a year. And I'm like, that ain't bad for your 1952 house. But tell us, let's go back into a little bit more about depopulation, and then let's talk a little bit more about riders that have to do with flood, and try to help our listeners to figure out what would help them to maneuver this crazy insurance industry.
Yeah, for sure. So with depopulation, basically the way that it works is Citizens has what's called the 20% rule. So it's really interesting how they do this. What they do is you get your policy with Citizens, and typically after a few months, they will try to depopulate you or offload you.
Always getting offloaded.
So what they do is they go to these other private insurance companies that they have agreements with, and they estimate your next year's renewal premium with those companies. If that renewal premium estimate for a year from now or 9 months or whatever it is, is within 20% of your Citizens premium, then they are going to make you go to that company. If it's greater than 20%, they give you the choice, and you have to log in or call your agent and choose which one you're going to go with. Stay with Citizens or go to the private company. Now, sometimes they'll give you a couple options for within the 20%, and then you have to choose. If you don't choose, they'll push you to the lesser option.
Okay. So what can we do though? Obviously there's nothing we can do about it. I mean, I go on appointments all the time and we talk about it, and I walk through people's homes and I'm like, what kind of panel do you have? And they're just like, what the hell does that matter? How much my house is worth, right? But it matters because it's just part of the deal. So I had a water heater leaking today, and the seller's like, I sold it as is. And I go, I understand you sold it as is. I agree with you. However, a leaky water heater is not going to get the buyer insurance, and the purchase contract clearly gives them an out for this. So, I guess if it is within 20%, I know that Citizens will allow a Zinsco panel.
Correct.
But that other insurance agent will not allow that.
Yeah.
So it's probably best to keep your Zinsco in that case, but it is still more expensive sometimes to have that. How does that work?
So Citizens will accept some of these electrical panels that other companies won't.
That have been recalled.
Yeah, or that the companies just don't like. They're more hazardous or a safety concern.
Right.
And so that just means that you're not going to fit in any other carrier's guidelines, and you're going to have to go with Citizens. Whenever you go with Citizens, I have to bring to them proof that you're not within 20% of the next carrier. In that scenario, I would just show proof that, hey, they're not going to accept this electrical panel, and that's why they're going with Citizens.
Right. And then they wouldn't try to depopulate them?
They definitely can. Now,
so they could drop you altogether.
They could, yeah. So if you get depopulated to another company, it's funny. It's kind of like when you close a loan or a deal with a property. After the fact, a lot of times mortgage companies or insurance companies don't go back and check. And so they might not go back and check, if you go from Citizens to a private insurer, the characteristics of the property of the panel. They just know that Citizens said that this property was good.
Right.
And so at that point, the new company could send out an inspector, and if they find that you have this Federal Pacific panel, then they can say, hey, you have to get this fixed or we're going to drop you. Which at that point,
So then what happens? Citizens is our only option when nobody else wants us, right? TipTap was good in the past.
Yeah, TipTap is still there. I actually just got offloaded from Citizens to TipTap.
Okay. I mean, TipTap typically will take those mansard roofs that are like those square ones, but you can't get access to the attic. Like, and again, these are things that like a lot of people don't know, or you know, like the unexperienced agent. But I guess my question is like, okay, now you get dropped. Citizens won't pick you up. They're telling you need a new roof. What happens? Like, your lender is going to try to force place.
Yeah.
Who are they force placing with?
Yeah, so forced place coverage is typically, just a good rule of thumb, is 2 to 3 times the market value of insurance
That I know.
cost.
It's crazy. That's when people come
and
to me and
so
go, my mortgage has gone up so many times. And I'm like, let me see what you're doing. And I look and I go, you have forced place insurance. Or like, some people just don't know.
Yeah, a lot of people don't know, like, and they think, well, if I just drop this, I'll be fine if I drop my insurance. But that forced place insurance is really expensive.
Right.
And it is really expensive because of scenarios like the one we're talking about. And so you end up getting forced place insurance, or you have to put a new roof on.
Right. So there is no way around some of this. I mean, we can search around, like sometimes putting on new roofs, sometimes it's coating the roof.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, yeah.
what about those? Let's talk. I want to talk about that for a minute, because a lot of people have those old tile, those concrete tile roofs, which I think is like the best roofs ever. They're better than the roofs today, but
Yeah.
yet they're like 19. They're older than me,
Yeah.
so we won't talk about that. They're older than me. So what do you do?
I'm a big fan personally of the elastomeric coating, you know,
Right.
that rubberized coating. It makes the roof almost like one piece. And so
It looks pretty too.
yeah, it doesn't look bad as long as it's clean. And so those are good, but with most companies, they're going to ask, how old is the roof?
Right.
And if the roof is from 1968, even though it has a coating on
I
it,
didn't say I was that old.
they're not going to insure it. Yeah, because the roof is too old.
But even if like an inspector comes in and says, like, this is like rock solid, this is great, it was just coated, it has 5 more years.
Most private insurance companies are not going to do it. Just
Okay.
like if your electrical system is from 1968. Most private insurers
That's
are
going to
not
be
going
like those fuses.
fuses or knob and tube, which fuses Citizens will take.
What?
Yeah, interesting enough, Citizens will take fuses. But
Well,
with
maybe I'm thinking the knob and tube is like the one they're like round and you plug them and pull them out.
knob and tube, yeah.
Oh my
which
God.
I haven't really,
You've
I
never
haven't
seen
really
it. I
seen
know,
that.
I'm older. I told you, but I'm not 1968.
I've seen pictures. But if there's 5 years of life left or more on a roof, we can submit it to Citizens for approval. Now, that approval, most of the time it's a yes, but if the roof is older, I believe if I'm remembering correctly, 25 years on a soft roof, so like a shingle roof, or 50 years on a hard roof, like a tile roof.
Okay.
If it's older than 25 or 50 years, we can submit it to Citizens. I actually had one today, and then they could choose to approve it or not.
And did it get approved?
The one today did, yeah.
Okay, so that was a win
Yeah.
for you today.
Yeah.
Right? So what would be the best way for them to get a hold of you?
Yeah, so I don't work like your traditional insurance agent. I like to work when realtors are working and when good loan officers are working. You know, they work on the weekends when people are off and able to look at properties. So I'm available any day of the week. I work from my cell phone. If you call this number, it's my cell phone. That's what you're going to get. So that number is 954-326-9842. You can call me there. You can text me there. It's going to my iPhone.
Listen,
So-
I was emailing him at, what was it, Saturday, I'm a loser, Saturday night at like, I think it was really Sunday morning, I think technically, or was
was
it
late.
Saturday morning? I think it was Friday, but it was Saturday morning, and like 1 o'clock in the morning, I'm sending him things, and I'm like this, and I'm like, oh, I was like, I know there's a lot of stuff, but because one of the things I like to do is I like to know as a realtor, you know, that I want to know that they can afford the house based on the insurance quote. And like one of the quotes we got back, and I was like, wow, okay. But it's a big, big house, you know, so you're going to pay. You want to play, you're going to pay.
Yeah, so a few tips that I can give is one, hurricane protection, that's always good. You know, shutters, impact windows, those are always really good to have. Those can help lower the cost. Roughly sometimes like $1,500 for the year
Okay.
if you have those. And they're Miami-Dade approved shutters in windows, of course. A lot of people ask me about like burglar alarms. I had someone today.
Isn't it like $10 a month you're
Yeah, you
saving,
usually
and
got
you're
like-
spending 80?
They had this company tell them,
Sorry,
hey,
Tasha.
if you get this burglar, fire alarm, everything, it can save you 20% on your home insurance. And I laughed on the phone because it can save you, but 20% in Florida is...
What's the average?
Typically, I see like $20. And so it depends on the property, it depends where it's at, all of those things. You know, when insurance companies are underwriting a policy, they pay actuaries a ton of money to figure out how likely it is for a risk to have a loss.
So if it's, okay, so I have a question. So if a property's in a neighborhood that's a little more, like it has a higher crime rate, would they get more of a discount for having one in that area? If it's like there's certain zip codes like that are like high crime rates.
Yeah.
Would that zip code create a higher cost for the insurance yet a higher savings when having that?
So I wouldn't be able to answer that directly because it would depend on the carrier.
Okay.
But what I will tell you is when I worked on the underwriting side, there were certain, we had to look up crime scores of places. And if it was too high of a crime score, the insurance company would say, well, we're not going to write there at all. It's just too risky.
Okay. So we've talked about depopulation, and I think that you could actually help give tips on how to like get better credits, which would be, I don't think you get any more credit for having impact versus accordion shutters or panels,
I say
Miami-Dade.
I say this all the time. It's, you know, it depends on the insurance company. But
really? They would give more for like impact versus the other?
Well, think about it. If you just have regular shutters versus impact, if somebody doesn't put up the shutters, that's not great.
Yeah,
Now,
what's the liability there?
Yeah.
Hurricane comes through. So like I have rentals, right? I put in the lease, they have to put it up.
Yeah.
So now I got to go check that they did it. And
You
if
should,
now
yeah.
if something happens and they didn't do it, what does that mean for me? Obviously it's my property, I get it. Like you're not going to get blood from a stone. I get that.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I mean, if they're renting there and they agreed to put it up and there was damage because they didn't, then they would more than likely be liable. But I would tell you to talk to an attorney. What I will tell you is that what we're reviewing as agents is what's on that 4-point inspection typically, and the wind mitigation inspection. And so the wind mitigation inspection has a section for opening protection. And there's a few different levels of opening protection.
Okay.
There's level A, B, C, N, and X.
why does it jump around on this number? But okay.
No,
all right, go ahead. So tell me what those each mean.
So A is where you're going to get the best credits.
Okay.
X is where you're not getting anything.
But
And
in between, like how does that look? What is that like?
so it depends on certain like missile pressures. So like if a stick was to come off of a tree and fly through your window, how pressurized is that window or that panel able to hold that stick from getting in?
So
And
if
then-
you don't have impact windows and you have panels, you don't know when that stick's going to come through.
No, but it measures how safe that panel is. You've probably seen before like these clear panels versus the aluminum panels. They're
Okay.
going to have different pressure ratings.
So
it's
that's
kind of like
a B.
It's kind of it's kind of like the windshield of an aircraft or an airplane. You know,
Right.
they make sure that it's really strong. And then some of those levels are also talking about or they grade off of, do you have all of your windows and doors covered or
Which then
only
you
a
don't get.
portion of them?
Right, but you still get X, right? If you only have a portion.
Not necessarily. It depends on how the inspector fills it out, because if you read on there, it gets pretty granular in explaining if you have
Interesting.
one or not missing. So like
I thought it changed to like all or none kind of thing.
that's the assumption, but it's not that way.
Okay. You know what? I learned something because it wasn't, I don't
Yeah.
know. And I guess it also depends on everybody's education and what they know. So I really appreciate you coming and joining us today. That went really quick. I feel like I actually did learn a couple of things today. I love learning, and I know our audience loves to learn too. So to me, it sounds like you're a really easy guy to talk to and available. So even if you just want to ask him, you know, like how his day was, like I would say give him a call but he's looking for business from agents, from owners. So give Brandon a call.
Thank you.
Tell them your number again.
My number is 954-326-9842. And again, please don't treat me like the traditional agent. I'm available weekends, evenings. I want to make sure that homes and families are protected. And like I said, I look out for the insured, not necessarily the insurance company.
Well, thank you very much. And when you're looking for that top agent, give me a call, Laura Sanders, 954-650-0827. Thanks everyone for listening, and until next week, have a good night.
Thank you for tuning in for Making Money with Laura Sanders, a name you can trust. To join the conversation, call us at the studio, 888-994-4995 Studio A, or contact Laura directly at 954-650-0827.